very much, Senator Gardner, for your leadership. Thank you to Brad and to Don and to the great local leaders we have here in Durango. Lang Sias is going to be an amazing Lieutenant Governor. The reason I know that is because when I selected him, his phone blew up with texts from Democrats in the House, and they said, "We're going to hate to lose you. You are a pragmatic leader that we really respected." Lang is a humble guy, but he spent 12 years as a Top Gun pilot, 12 years as a Top Gun instructor, decorated combat veteran. 20 years in the U.S. Navy serving his country in the great state of Colorado, as opposed to my opponent in this governor's race, who has voted to defund every military bill that he could while in Congress, including to defund Fort Carson in Colorado Springs, which has a $7 billion economic impact to our state, including not to support the first pay raise for troops in a decade. And I just enjoyed Halloween with my kids, on a lighter note. And I hope you all got through Halloween. I have a 10-year-old son. He dressed as Chewbacca. My wife dressed as Danica Patrick from NASCAR. And my middle daughter, she dressed as a witch. And the youngest daughter, who's 5, Olivia, she was a cupcake. And so I talked to Chewbacca on the way out the door. And I said to him, my 10-year-old, who's in 5th grade, he said, "Dad, my goal this Halloween is to get 5 pounds of candy." And I took a scale from your bathroom and Mom's, and I'm gonna weigh it out. So it took him about 2 hours to get 5 pounds of candy. I let him go at it. He brought 2 pillowcases. What I didn't tell him was that Dad and Mom were confiscating 4.9 pounds of candy. And in great Congressman Polis fashion, we're going to redistribute that candy to the rest of Colorado. Look, here's what is at stake in this election. I think what is at stake is a future that all of us want for our kids in this state and future generations. And if you don't have kids and have young people you care about, we want to make sure that Colorado is a place where we can have a growing economy, where the government has a small footprint on the lives of small business owners, like the great coffee shop behind us, like the great restaurant to our right here. We want to keep government generally out of people's lives so they can recognize their hopes and dreams. It's why we've come out with a detailed plan to fix our infrastructure for the long term in Colorado, to pay for it with 4 dedicated sources of revenue from our general fund. We've also come out with a plan to increase accessibility and affordability to healthcare, because I believe we have a moral obligation to make sure that healthcare is sustainable, because if you look at our Medicaid population, half of them are kids, even though they only represent about 1/4 or 1/5 of the total cost. But we don't do it by driving our healthcare system off a cliff through a government-run single-payer system that Congressman Polis wants. 2 years ago, I joined forces with Bill Ritter, a former Democratic governor, to defeat state-run healthcare. The reason a former Democratic governor in Colorado and a Republican treasurer joined forces is we knew a double-digit tax on businesses would send everybody from Los Amigos to Taco Bell to Merrill Lynch to Grease Monkey out of Colorado, because they can't afford it. And it results in less rural doctors in areas like Durango and Grand Junction that are already having a shortage. It involves longer lines. It involves the state government telling you which doctor to choose. That's not compassionate, that's cruel. And it's an empty government promise that will bankrupt our state. We've come out with plans to keep more dollars in the classroom. Because if you look at Colorado's 178 school districts, what you find is that the number of teachers has grown by 8%, the number of students 6%. But the administrative costs have grown by 35%. That's a raw deal for all of us as investors in the future of public education. We want to spend money to improve student-teacher ratios in that classroom, to improve outcomes, not on administrative bloat. We want to spend money to ultimately compensate teachers more. And we've also come out with a plan where we can recognize the values that all of us care about in Colorado, which is clean air to breathe, a responsible, accountable, and transparent energy industry that contributes 230,000 jobs to Colorado, $32 billion of annual economic impact, the largest revenue source for water conservation efforts in Colorado, $1 billion plus to our schools. And I'm running against somebody who supported a setback, bankrolled a setback just 3 years ago that would have driven the energy industry out of Colorado, as bad as 112. And we will never be able to recover. I'm running against somebody that believes in a renewable mandate of 100%. He started by saying by 2030, and now he said by 2040. You know what? We've invested $1.3 trillion globally in alternative energy sources, and they still represent less than 3% of our energy. And I tell people, look, I'm for all forms of energy. I'm for wind, I'm for solar, I'm for natural gas, I'm for oil, and I'm for clean coal, but I'm not for mandates on the backs of the Coloradans that can least afford it. I'm not for subsidizing alternate forms of energy so that people say, what the heck happened to my utility bill? It's double. How come I have to pay double the amount to heat my home in winter and turn on the lights year-round? That is an empty government mandate that will not make life better for Coloradans. This election is so important because we are running against somebody that has promised approximately $90 billion, and that's conservative, in government spending. I can tell you as the Treasurer of Colorado, our budget is only $30 billion. $20 billion comes from all of us as taxpayers, whether we like it or not, in the form of state income tax, sales tax, annoying fees. $10 billion from the federal government, which has been used primarily for Medicaid expansion in accordance with the Affordable Care Act. If you are promising to triple the size of Colorado's government and budget, guess what? Here's the bad news. Only two ways to pay for it. You either jack up somebody's personal income taxes through the roof, and of course people say, well, we have a defense mechanism against that, but this is the guy that's talked about gutting the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, fighting Tabor and winning, and wanting to do away with it. Or else you take it out on the business community in the form of regulations and fees. Either one of those outcomes makes Colorado a really hard place to live and work in the future. I don't care if you're a Democrat, an independent, an unaffiliated voter, and we cannot have that be the Colorado future that all of us want to have, from Durango to Denver to the western slope to the eastern plains. And that is why it's important that your voice be heard in this election. I was really happy to get the endorsement of the Durango Herald, and they said, among other things, Walker Stapleton represents the most pragmatic leadership that will keep Colorado on a similar path that we have been on under a Democratic governor. And this guy, Polis, will represent a radical, extreme departure that we will never recover from, economically, personally, individually. So vote your jobs, vote your values, and turn out others to vote as well. Talk to the Democrats in your family that you might not understand but you still love. Talk to independents. Remind them that the Colorado future that all of us want is at stake in this election. If we get a greater turnout here in Durango amongst people supporting myself and Lang, we can win a close election. I believe it in my heart, and thank you so much for coming out. God bless.